In light of the recent events surrounding the Copenhagen summit, there is only one question to ask at this time. Is Queen Elizabeth II asking for the same treatment as Edward VIII? Put another way, Edward VIII was forced to abdicate the throne for supporting Adolf Hitler. Will the Queen be forced to step down for her open support of the Copenhagen agenda? It has already been suggested by Lord Christopher Monckton, the grandson of the man who arranged Edward's 1936 abdication, that the Queen had better not involve herself in these types of affairs or she could lose the throne. But, leaving aside for the moment the support lent to the Nazis by the House of Windsor, let's track the hoofprints or paw prints of the Queen leading up to her demand that the Commonwealth put in place a genocide policy worse than Adolf Hitler's at the 2009 Copenhagen summit. On November 25th, the Queen, Gordon Brown, David Miliband and others met in London with the ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed, and representatives from the UAE, giving the London crowd an early warning of the coming default of Dubai, the British Empire's new Hong Kong and center for flushing dirty money, like Afghanistan dope money, into the financial monetary system. That meeting was a telltale sign that the world monetary system had entered a new phase of chain reaction collapse, typified by waves of sovereign defaults, more bailouts, and government austerity fueling social upheaval. You might ask, what is a reasonable thing to do in such a situation? What is a proper response to accelerated, worsening economic and social conditions across the planet and the collapse of agro-industrial economies' abilities to produce? Well, on November 27th, the Queen, like Edward VIII before her, put her royal support behind a mass genocide policy and called on her 53 Commonwealth nations, representing a third of the world population, to do the same in putting their support behind Copenhagen.
The Commonwealth can be proud of the fact that in each of its 6 decades, it has shaped the international response to emerging global challenges. And on this, the eve of the UN Copenhagen Summit on climate change, the Commonwealth has an opportunity to lead once more. The threat to our environment is not a new concern, but it is now a global challenge which will continue to affect the security and stability of millions for years to come.
The confirmation that genocide was on the agenda should have come with the release of a report intended to shape the events around the Copenhagen summit, the United Nations Population Fund's 2009 State of the World Population Report. In no uncertain terms, the report makes the case for genocide, particularly in poorer countries, in the interests of the environment, arguing that the most effective and cheap way to fight climate change and reduce emissions is through population reduction. At the November 18th unveiling of this report, the UN Population Fund featured Roger Martin, director of the Optimum Population Trust, to present sections of the report. Now, look at Martin's organization for a moment. Just recently, the Optimum Population Trust, in collaboration with the London School of Economics, released a study vectored toward Copenhagen, prescribing a global warming remedy known as the mass reduction of the world population by about 2/3, or 3 to 5 billion persons by the year 2050. The OPT study, titled Fewer Emitters, Lower Emissions, Less Cost, concludes that the world population will reach well over 9 billion people by 2050, but by reducing the present population by about 500 million persons and sharply decreasing world fertility rates, the population of the planet would be no greater than 6 billion people by 2050, and CO2 emissions would decrease. For those who have referred to this as a veiled threat of genocide, where's the veil? Not even Hitler could have imagined mass murder on this scale. It is Prince Philip, on record for decades, stating his desire to reduce the world population to 2 billion persons or less, and his World Wildlife Fund, that is presently behind this genocide scheme. OPT is merely a partner group of the World Wildlife Fund's Global Footprint Network, a group of organizations under WWF sponsorship responsible for creating the fraud of the ecological footprint. It is an evil organization, and any honest person can see that there is no moral difference between Prince Philip's World Wildlife Fund, Barack Obama, and Adolf Hitler. So it should come as no surprise that the monarchy's World Wildlife Fund is now primping its parrot, President Obama, after his performance at Oslo last week. WWF CEO Carter Roberts praised Obama's Nobel acceptance speech. But if you look at what the president said, it was nothing less than a justification of the preventive war made famous by Adolf Hitler and more recently by Bush and Blair in the Iraq War. Obama in that speech invoked the imperial right to military intervention, to launching future wars on the basis of a common threat to security, that is, global warming.
The world must come together to confront climate change. There is little scientific dispute that if we do nothing, we will face more drought, more famine, more displacement, all of which will fuel more conflict for decades. For this reason, it is not merely scientists and environmental activists who call for swift and forceful action. It's military leaders in my own country and others who understand our common security hangs in the balance.
So here is a question. How is the monarchy's support of U.S. President Barack Obama any different from the royal family's previous support of Adolf Hitler? How is the monarchy's support of the Copenhagen population reduction agenda any different? When Hitler addressed 20th century British imperialist Lord Lothian in 1935, saying Germany, England, France, Italy, America, and Scandinavia should arrive at some agreement whereby they would prevent their nationals from assisting the industrializing of countries such as China and India. How is that any different from the present expressions of the monarchy and its lackeys at Copenhagen? The imperial monetary system is collapsing now. And as in the 20th century, the British monarchy is pulling out all the stops to push through a radical agenda for depopulation and world imperial control. So when the Queen calls on her Commonwealth to support a population policy magnitudes more radical than Adolf Hitler's, are these sufficient grounds to give Elizabeth II the same treatment as Edward VIII? And in the United States, does our President Obama now deserve to be removed from office for conspiring against the American people with a foreign government? I think we should proceed. The answer to both questions is yes.